Hello guys, and welcome back to another tutorial series. In this series we'll be taking absolute beginners through how to use the engine, and at the end you should be able to go off by yourself and use what you've learnt here to continue making your game. Now this is, like I've just said, aimed at absolute beginners, but all levels are welcome here. If you're here to learn something new about the engine, welcome. And to the absolute beginners, do not be afraid. I shall take you through absolutely everything you need to know, and yeah, let's get started. So I've already got the Epic Games Launcher loaded up, but if you are just watching this without knowing anything about the engine at all and don't know how to install it, don't worry, I got you. So I've got Firefox open here with the Epic Games Launcher loaded, so I'll leave this in the description, don't worry, just click on the link there and it will take you to this website. Now just click on Get Epic Games and it should install a installer here. Now I've already got Epic Games installed, so I'm just going to cancel that. And yes, this is my second recording of this tutorial, don't ask about that. Just go to the Downloads tab, just click on this and it should bring up this. Install the Epic Games Launcher to here, just click on install and go through it and it should be all good. So go to the Epic Games Launcher, and I've already got 3 engine versions installed. I'll be using 4.0.3, this one. If you don't know how to add a engine version, it's quite easy. You just go to this little plus sign up here and it should bring up a blank engine spot like this with an install button. Just click on this drop down and select the engine version that you want, and you should be able to say if you want this to be your current version. So basically what that means, if I go back to my desktop emulator and you click on this, that's the engine version that should load up. So just install that, and once it's finished, it might launch automatically, it might not. I think that depends on a few settings, but yeah, just launch it. Okay, so when you open up the Unreal Project browser, this is what you'll see. So you've got all your projects here. If you're just starting, this should be blank. And yes, I know I'm very very creative with my name, like tutorial, my project 2. Project Mirror is actually the game that I'm currently working on as my studio, Spiderweb Studios. And yeah, I am working on that currently. It's very good fun. So just scroll down to the game section here, and you should see you got a load of options here for templates. We're going to be using the first person template because we're making a basic flashlight which should take you through how to use pretty much all the functionality that's widely used. So just to give a brief overview about what we'll be doing in this series, we will be covering how to handle input, how to make variables of different types, how to use timers, how to use components and add components, how to make and add UI, how to use event dispatchers, and how to use interfaces. Now, if that seems overwhelming, don't worry. I'll be splitting it up and we'll be doing each bit individually. I won't be doing it in individual episodes because that will take that would be very inefficient. But in this episode, what I'm planning to cover is handling the input and handling variables and components. So let's just worry about those 3 right now. So, sorry, I've got the hiccups if you can hear that. Since we're, oh yeah, and also towards the end of the series, the later episodes will be how to convert what we've got into C++, how to expose different variables and functions to blueprints, and all that other lovely stuff. So by the end of it, we should have a fully C++ implemented character that should do the same functionality as the blueprint version. If you don't want to do the C++ parts, that's absolutely fine, you don't have to, but it's useful to know how to expose C++ stuff to blueprints for the future. And yeah, It's useful to know both parts of the engine. Since we're going to be using C++ later, you might think that we're going to be needing a C++ defaulted project. We don't. We want a blueprint one, because that will give us a blueprint basis to work with. It'll give us a blueprint game mode, controller, and character, which is what we want right now, and not a C++ one. The target platform, we're going to go for desktop, but we could go for mobile if that's the sort of game that you want. Right now, desktop is fine. Quality preset, I'm going to go for maximum, but you could go for scalable as well. Yep. Starter content, I want that enabled. Ray tracing, you can just leave that disabled. I'm just going to use mine. I'm just going to call it flashlight tutorial and click create. This is where the project's going to be stored really quickly here. It should also generate a project folder for you, but if not, just choose where you want to go by just clicking on this symbol here. So, just load it up. My computer's pretty good, so it shouldn't take a few seconds. And there we go. So, when you first load up the project, this is what you're going to see. So, over here is the outliner, where you've got all the objects in the scene, and you can just scroll through them by pressing the up and down arrows on your keyboard. If you want to change the lighting, just left click in the viewport, press right control and L, and it should bring up this nice little thing. Just a nice little quick tip on how to control the lighting in your scene. Quite cool. And just right control L, because I want it to be nice and almost sunset. So there we go. Just move around a little bit and it should disappear after a few seconds. So to fly around, hold right click and WASD to fly around. If you want to speed up or slow down the camera, it's just the mouse wheel. So I'm scrolling mine up and you can see I'm going a lot faster. Scroll it down and I'm moving considerably slower. If you want to rotate around a particular point, just hold Alt and left click. If you want to scroll in or out, hold left control. Sorry, not right control. It's right click. Alt, hold left Alt and right click and drag up or down to pan in or out like this. And Alt and middle click to pan like this. So basically, if you want to do any movement with the camera at all within a reel, hold Alt and a middle and a mouse button. To rotate like this, just hold the right mouse button and do that. And if you want to do this, which is kind of like a move around without using WSD, it's left click and drag in the direction you want to go. Now that mistake that I just did was, well, the next thing I wanted to show, which was how to basically follow an object while you move it. So what I'm doing right now is holding left shift and holding one of these arrows things. So that's how you do that. If you want to duplicate an item like this, all you need to do is hold left Alt and just drag it like this. And it also works if you rotate it. And that's how you duplicate items. So that's the basics of how to use the viewport. Up here you're going to have all these different options for the things. So you got like select objects for Q, select and translate objects with W, select and rotate with E, and select and scale with R. So basically these are keyboard shortcuts that you can have. This cycles between coordinate and world. So if I wanted to go here and I wanted the translation tool, then this is in the world currently, but if I wanted to, for example, want to local, select this, and as you can see now it's aligning itself with the object's orientation. So you got surface snapping as well, so it'll just snap to the surface. This is the position grid, so if I want to snap to bigger things here, you just actually I'll turn it up so it's more obvious what's going on. So yep, and if I wanted to go smaller, that's basically what that does. Similarly, this is the rotation equivalent. So if I wanted it to only be rotated in 90-degree intervals, so as you can see, it's a square. That's not going to do anything. So yeah, only rotates in 60-degree increments. Similarly, this is the scale. So it'll only scale in these amounts. And this is the camera speed, which is kind of self-explanatory. So I'm not going to demonstrate that. And so this is how you go between different viewports if you want to line something up in particular. So this is the back, the right and the top view, and you can line something up here. And over here on the left side you've got all these viewport options. So if you want it to be real time, you show the FPS. So 120 FPS, not too bad. Show the stats. So you got all these different ones here, the engine, Niagara. Don't worry about what this is right now. It's the particle effect system in Unreal. You got the levels, all these lovely stuff. You've got the toolbar, which is basically that. You want that shown. You got the field of view, so I'm going to stick with 90. Far view of planes, so basically how far away from the camera should it clip. And since it's 0, it's infinite, so everything will be shown. Screen percentage. What does this actually do? Oh, there's no tooltip to see what. Never mind. Allow cinematic control, game view. So this basically toggles the gizmos on and off. Immersive mode, which is self-explanatory. Got the allow camera shakes. So basically through Blueprint's C++, you can enable you can do camera shakes. You've got bookmarks, which you can basically set different parts of the viewport to a bookmark. Create cameras. You can take screenshots with this one. If I take a screenshot here, specify the region, so you can say I just want this bit here. You've got that. Capture it, and if I go to the Unreal Flashlight tutorial, save, no, screenshots, and you can see I've got a nice high resolution screenshot there. Okay, so I think that's, and you got the perspective here, so you can go from top, bottom, left, right, front, back, and you've got all these different modes, which you can see if it's unlit. You've got the wireframe here. That sphere thing that you can see is the sky sphere, provides a little backdrop, detail lighting, all these other things you can have a little play around with and show, basically, so you can hide all the static meshes, and yeah, you can just play around with these. So on this side here, you've got the place actors tab. So you've got the lighting here, the shapes, the cinematic. Is it still recording? Yes. Visual effects, so you've got like post-process effects, which I'm going over in a new tutorial series later on. Sky, atmosphere, volumetric clouds, all this lovely stuff that we don't need to care about right now, but you can have a little play around with. You've got all these volumes here as well, and this basically just exposes all the classes. So we don't need to worry about these yet. Got to select the most. So we've got landscape, foliage, mesh, paint, modeling, fracture, brush, and animation. Again, don't need to worry about these just yet. This is just the basics. I'm just showing you guys how to navigate through the engine. So quickly add to the project. So we can import content. We've got the Quixel bridge, and we've got the Unreal Marketplace. So this is a new thing in Unreal 5 where we can just open up the Megascans library and import them directly into the project. We're not going to do that just yet. I might add that into the beginner series later on, but it's very simple to do. So yep, and right here we've got empty blueprint class, convert selection, all these lovely stuff. And this is the level sequencer, which I'll go over again in another tutorial series. So what's the last thing I need to do? Oh yes, the content drawer. This is where all your assets are going to be stored. So if you want to open up, for example, the first person character, just double click on it, and this might happen. This is a bug in Unreal 5, or it could be just my computer, I don't really know. But if this happens to you, just click on this little bit here and just drag it up here and it'll work like this. So this is the event graph. This is where all your functionality will be put. So yeah, let's begin with the logic. So over here it comes with some built-in functionality, so like move forward and backwards with both the gamepad and mouse, turn right, turn left, look up and look down with the controller and the gamepad. So, sorry, the mouse and the gamepad, and it comes with a basic jump. So if we go back to the first person map and just click play and pick up the gun, we got a nice little gun, and we can walk around with WASD. We can jump with space, and that's all. That's what comes with this. So we come to the viewport, and this is what our character actually looks like. So we got some arms, we've got a camera and a capsule. And we've got a character movement component. This is what handles our movement. We're not going to touch this just yet. I could do after this a sprinting tutorial as well on how to affect that, but this is just the basics. So how do we add a flashlight? Well, what is a flashlight? It's essentially a point which projects light in one direction in a cone. In Unreal, that is called a spotlight. If I just scroll down here, if you just click add here, and it'll just scroll down where it says lights. We've got directional lights, point light, which is essentially like a light bulb, rectangular lights, skylights, and this is a spotlight. So directional cone shape, like e.g. a torch. This is perfect for what we want. So there we go. And let's just click and drag it onto the, let's go with the first person mesh. Actually no, the camera. The camera's probably the better one. Just have it just below the camera. Let's say there. So this is quite a big area. If we were to just compile it now and just go over here and play it, this looks good to me, and it just follows the camera like this. But I think this is a bit too wide of a spread, and I don't think the light is enough. So if you go over here to where it says light, the outer cone angle, this basically controls how focused the light beam should be. I'm going to go for a beam of 25. Source radius basically controls how big the starting part is. Source radius, this is kind of like a softer version of that. The source length. Basically, this can be used to define the shape of the source, and that affects the flashlight. Temperature just controls the color. So if I wanted to go down to, let's say, 1250, compile it, come back here, and you can see it's a lot warmer. If you're familiar with astrophysics and the temperature of stars, it's the sort of thing it uses. This is in Kelvin, I believe. Yep. The color temperature in Kelvin of the black body. So if I wanted to go 2500, this should be slightly warmer. Yeah. I actually quite like this light. I'm going to keep it like this. But if you didn't want this, you can just disable temperature and it should go back to normal. Indirect lighting and volumetric scattering. This not important for this tutorial. Intensity, which is what we want to change. So I want to go for double this amount. So what we can do, instead of typing it out, if we just want double this, we can just get the asterisk and times it by 2, and it'll calculate it for us. If you wanted to change the color of the light without using temperature, this is where you do it. You can just get rid of all the red light, and it will do it for you. It's in 225 for each one. That's basically how that works. The attenuation radius, if I just drop that down to say 10, it's basically how far this light will affect. Anything outside of this radius here will not be affected by any light. So yeah, if you look at it, it's actually almost like a sphere, part of a sphere. So yeah, it's quite cool. Got advanced down here. Inverse squared fall off basically uses like physically based fall off and all this stuff that we don't really need right now. Cast volumetric shadow we don't really need, but I can show you what that does in a different tutorial when I talk about like post processing. Visible, hidden in game. Basically, what this means is if it's visible, then this will actually. If I turn this off, actually, let's see what that does. It's better to show than to tell. So you can, as you can see, the light's not on. But if I was to make this visible again, it's on. Basically, that's what it does. It basically means, is this going to be used in rendering? Hidden in game basically means that is this gizmo going to be in game? Like, if I make this now, okay. Maybe it's the actual component itself as well. Because if I pile this down and play it, yeah, it's working. Yeah, basically, this means if it's hidden in game, then it won't be drawn. But yeah, I don't know why there's two. It always confused me as well. Don't worry about it. Start with tick enabled. I'm not sure it needs tick. Yeah. Okay. So that's basically how you add a component to a actor with a spotlight. Next step: how do you actually make it turn on or off? So let's go to an empty spot here on the event graph. Click right click, and it opens up this these drop downs. So, and if you have the spotlight active by clicking on it, just click on this, left click, right click in the event graph, and you can actually call a function on the spotlight without needing to drag in a reference. It's really cool. So components, nope, rendering, lighting, nope. Where is it? Set intensity. There it is. Set intensity. That's what we want. So I'm going to bind this to the left mouse button. So just right click and type that in, and we want mouse events left mouse button. And just drag off this with left click, release it, and it should come up with executable actions. Now, what we want is a piece of logic called a flip-flop. So let's type that in. Connect both parts to this. Now you might be thinking that why this? So basically what this is going to do is when we click mouse button once, it's going to turn on. When we turn it again, it's going to turn off. So it's going to go on, off, on, off, on, off. Now you might think that you might be saying how we're going to handle doing that with both pins here going into this one. So this new intensity here, just drag off it and type in select float. Drag in the to pick a, and type in the variable that you want the flashlight to turn when it's turned on. Mine's 10,000, so going through the logic, left mouse button when that's pressed for the first time, it's going to go to A. It's going to set the intensity of the light component to 10,000. When it's clicked again, it's going to go to B, and it's going to come here, and it's going to choose B here to 0, and it's going to turn it off. Don't forget, when you go to Spotlight, you need to actually turn the intensity down to 0 for the first time, because it should be off. And save it, come back here, and it should turn on. Now, if yours turns on immediately, it might immediately like mine did. That's because when you actually click into the project for the first time, it registers a left click, and yeah, it works. Perfect. Now you might be thinking, how do you go from the left mouse button event here to something like primary action or input axis turn right or left? That's the next thing we're going to cover first. So go to edit, project settings, and this will open up the current settings for the project. So you've got description, you've got the maps and modes here, which goes to the default pawn, which is basically the character that you possess when you first start the game, the HUD class, which is like the basic heads-up display that you use, the player controller class, game state, player state, which is this is the state of the game, this is the state of the player. Click on advanced, it's got all this lovely stuff here. If you wanted to change which map starts up when you open the editor, it's here, editor startup map. If you want to change which map the game loads when it first loads up as well, it's right here as well. And it goes through all this lovely stuff here. Now, to add a new input, you just scroll down here and you go into input here. Now we want an action mapping non-axis. Action basically means like a button press or something that just has a pressed or released state. Axis means a continuous checking. So like if you had say a joystick, then that would be an axis mapping because it's having to see where it is between -1 and 1, if it's all the way to the right, all the way up, down, left, right, whatever. Usually, I think in the new system it can handle 2 directions, so like X and Y. In this system it can only handle 2 directions. So, yeah. It's usually kept for like turning right or left or forward or backwards. If I actually expand these out to, yeah. So it's kind of like W is -1, W is 1, -1, 1, -1. So basically this is scaling the vector for the input. So I'll go into more depth about that in my video game maths tutorial series that's in the works currently. I'll go over stuff like vectors and noise and booleans and all that good stuff, so stay tuned for that. So action mappings, let's just add a quick one here and just rename it to toggle flashlight, and this is where you choose the value. So you could scroll through here, or you could just click on this and then left click again, and it will automatically detect the input. If it doesn't, all you need to do is just scroll down here and it'll choose it. And you've got like gamepad, keyboard, mouse, Xbox, Steam, Android 5, basically every sort of controller out there that you could possibly ever need. And you've got all these additional ones here, so if you wanted it to be like Shift and X or Control and R, I don't know, I'm just saying random stuff. You basically add on like the one of these on essentially to be like, okay, it needs to be this button and this button. You can have all these enabled if you want to, so it has to be Shift, Control, Alt, X for something to occur. But for what we need right now, we just need the left mouse button. You don't need to save or anything, just exit out and come to the first person character. Now we can just right click and just type in toggle flashlight, and our action event will come up. And there we go. Now, second thing we want to do is use a variable to control how bright our flashlight should be. So we could come over here, click plus, and type in flashlight intensity. And this is where we control what variable type, so we just click on that, left click, and it should open this up. So we've got the basic variable types here, so like boolean if it's true or false, bytes, so like an 8-bit number, integer, and it's 64-bit integer. So this is basically for the majority of the cases this is what you need, except if you're handling really big numbers, you'd want the integer 64. Floats is basically what we want right now. It's a decimal number essentially, a number that has a decimal point somewhere as a floating point. That's where it comes from. Like the decimal point could be anywhere in that number. Names, strings, and texts are functionally different, but yeah, I'll have a video coming out soon explaining the difference between those because it is quite nuanced. Got vectors, which is another thing I'll be covering in the game dev maths series. It's basically going to either be a position or a direction, so like the player's position within the world or the direction that they're facing. That would be a good example of a vector. And the rotator, which is self-explanatory, is like the rotation in the world, in terms of yaw, pitch, and roll. And transform, which includes all of the above, so like a position, a rotation, and a scale. So for our purpose, and we've got all these other ones, so like we have different objects, different interface types, which I'll be going over in a future episode. We've got different structures here, enums. It's quite cool, quite good. So we want a float. Now we could do it that way, or we're going to be storing a boolean this way. We could just drag off is a, promote this to a variable, and say is b is flashlight on, and just drag that into here and here, and that'll go in there. So we can just drag off this and promote it to a variable. So just drag off here and promote to a variable here. Now we will need this when it comes to the UI, I think. At least in the next episode, before we add the event dispatcher, which we do here. Now if we compile this and go back to here, you should see that the flashlight doesn't work anymore because we forgot to do something. So the flashlight intensity, when it's first made, if I just click on this again, you can see that we need to compile the blueprint before we can set the value. I forgot about that. It's a very fundamental thing. So you got the default value here, and you can just set the default intensity. I'm going to set mine to 10,000. Compile it, come back to here, and it should work again. So I believe that's everything that I said I would do in this episode. Handling input, variable types, and components. Yeah. So I hope you. And one other thing I'd like to mention, you might be thinking to yourself, like, what's the point in doing the input action when you could just do the left mouse button, click, and I'm about to show you. So if you go to input here, you can actually add more things to activate the same events. So I could have, for example, let's go with F for flashlight. So add F and come back here. F key is doing the same thing. And this works across platforms, so you could have a controller. Let's go for gamepad. So we could have like X face button right, and that will do the exact same thing. That's the benefit of doing it this way, because it will do the same thing, and then you don't have to check for different inputs or anything like that. You just need to have the right input action, and the same thing with the axis mappings. And yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to cover in this episode, so I shall see you guys in the next episode, hopefully. Hope you enjoyed this. Leave a comment if it's helped you, especially, and leave a like as well. Yeah, I shall see you guys in the next episode.